Welcome to this explainer. History is usually utterly fascinated with empires built on conquest. We love reading about massive civilizations constructed through sheer force and, well, the subjugation of others. But today, we're looking at one of the most astonishing historical paradoxes ever recorded. How in the world did a group of impoverished refugees, people who had literally lost absolutely everything, manage to build a state from scratch, right in the middle of the desert? A state that within just a decade possessed the structural integrity to eventually defeat the massive Persian and Byzantine empires. They had no treasury, no existing bureaucracy, no standing army whatsoever, and yet they constructed a society that actually continues to influence law, economics, and community building today. It's an incredible story. Okay, let's dive into this blueprint step by step. We're going to cover a city in crisis, the foundations of a community, the first written constitution, economics and social welfare, and finally, a new paradigm.
Section 1. A city in crisis.
To truly understand the magnitude of what was built here, we really have to look at the raw materials they were working with back in 622 CE. When the Prophet Muhammad arrived as a refugee, the city of Yathrib was basically a post-conflict zone. It was a geographic and social mess. You had disconnected neighborhoods, completely decimated by a devastating civil war, and absolutely zero central authority. Every single group was just fending for itself. Contrast that reality with the vision that was about to be built: a unified, faith-based community operating under a single, highly cohesive framework. What's genuinely staggering about this is the jaw-dropping speed of these institutional developments. All of this kicks off in 622 CE. Right after arriving, they don't just, sit back and recover. They immediately get to work. They construct the central hub, the Masjid an-Nabawi. Then they establish the Malaka, which was a radical social system, and they sign a foundational political constitution. This wasn't some lucky accident of history. It was a highly proactive, structured vision being executed in real time. Section 2. Foundations of a community. So, when it came time to build the state's physical center, the Prophet didn't just seize the best piece of land. His camel actually stopped at a plot used for drying dates, which was owned by two orphan boys. Now, the boys wanted to just gift the land to him, but he outright refused. He insisted on paying them a fair price, firmly establishing property rights and justice from day one. And the sheer utility of what they built on that land, it's just incredible. Masjid al-Nabawi, the Prophet's mosque, was materially super simple. We're talking mud brick walls and palm trunk columns, but functionally, it was arguably the most complete civic institution in the ancient world. Think about it. It was a parliament where major decisions were consulted, a court of justice for legal disputes, the first full-time Islamic school housing the Ahl Sufa, the absolute center for social welfare distribution, and a diplomatic space for receiving foreign delegations. The whole shebang ran through this one humble structure. But look, a center is totally useless if you can't coordinate the people around it, right? The early Muslims desperately needed a way to call this scattered oasis community together. After considering things like bells and horns, the solution actually came through a dream, leading to the azan. When Bilal ibn Rabah called out from a rooftop, it wasn't just this beautiful spiritual moment. It was an absolutely incredible logistical innovation. It became the organizational heartbeat of the city. It synchronized a really diverse multi-neighborhood population by pulling everyone back to the center 5 times a day. However, there was a massive looming crisis they had to deal with: the refugees. The Muhajirun had fled Mecca with absolutely nothing, just the clothes on their backs. To solve this, the Prophet implemented a truly ingenious act of social engineering called the Muhaha, or the Brotherhood. He formally paired each Meccan refugee with a local Medinan known as the Ansar. Now, this wasn't just a casual meet and greet. These were deep, reciprocal bonds of support. He essentially invented what modern sociologists today call social capital, and he did it 1,400 years early. It instantly dissolved the refugee crisis through localized trust. The dynamic of this brotherhood is just perfectly captured in one specific exchange. Saad, who was a wealthy local, offered his new refugee brother Abdurrahman literally half of his wealth. Half! Abdurrahman responded with profound dignity. He said, "May Allah bless you in your family and your wealth. Just show me where the market is." It perfectly highlights this incredible dynamic: the astonishing generosity of the locals met entirely by the dignified, hardworking self-sufficiency of the refugees.
Section 3. The first written constitution.
Okay, so with the physical and social foundations set, the state needed a legal framework. Enter a document that political scientists universally recognize as one of the ancient world's most sophisticated achievements. Right off the bat, this constitution redefined identity by introducing the concept of the Ummah. In a 7th century world where who you were was strictly, completely defined by your bloodline and your tribe, this document did something revolutionary. It legally defined a single, unified political community based on shared values, shared principles, and mutual governance. It completely transcended tribal ancestry. A real game changer.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how comprehensive that vision was. Because, you see, it wasn't just for Muslims. The Jewish tribes of Medina were explicitly guaranteed their rights to their religion and their property. The document bound everyone, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, into a pact of collective security against outside threats. It also established a central rule of law to replace the endless, exhausting cycle of tribal blood feuds. I really want to put the historical magnitude of this into perspective. 600. That's the number. This multi-religious, pluralistic, constitutional framework, which actually guaranteed rights and mutual defense in writing, was established roughly 600 years before the Magna Carta was even drafted in Europe.
Section 4. Economics and social welfare.
Now that we have the laws in place, how did the people actually survive and thrive? Well, the Prophet designated a specific area for a brand new market and declared it open access. Crucially, there were to be no entry taxes or tolls, which created a truly free market environment right from the ground up. But free didn't mean a lawless free-for-all. He implemented strict economic ethics to protect the community. He completely banned hoarding goods during scarcity to inflate prices, he banned artificial bidding, and he outlawed transactions steeped in excessive uncertainty. Basically, he outlawed what modern economists today call monopolistic exploitation and market manipulation centuries before Western markets would regulate those exact same things. The underlying philosophy of this market is summed up in this incredibly succinct prophetic decree: whoever defrauds us is not of us. This wasn't just some minor civil fine. Transparency and honesty were made absolutely foundational to community membership itself. You simply couldn't claim to be part of the community if you were exploiting its members with hidden defects or false weights.
So the crucial point here is that wealth wasn't just generated, it was systematically cared for. They formalized a social welfare system with zakat, which is an obligatory 2.5% distribution of qualifying wealth directly to the vulnerable. But beyond taxes, the Prophet instilled a culture where a person's faith was directly tied to their neighbor's well-being. Taking care of the hungry wasn't just some job outsourced to a distant, faceless state bureaucracy. It was a deeply personal, distributed, bottom-up religious duty in every single neighborhood.
And this fierce protection extended to justice, too. No one was above the law. No matter their wealth or lineage. The Prophet declared that previous nations were actually destroyed because they let the powerful off the hook while punishing the weak. He then stated, impartially and unequivocally, if Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, were to steal, I would cut her hand. He was willing to subject his own beloved daughter to the exact same standard of law as the most vulnerable citizen. That completely shattered any notion of hereditary privilege. This strict ethical code even extended to the battlefield. Because they were constantly surrounded by threats, they had to establish a military, but it came with absolute rules of engagement. Do not kill non-combatants, don't destroy crops, don't mutilate, treat your prisoners humanely, and always honor your treaties. These principles, born from the extremely harsh military realities of a 7th century desert, astonishingly mirror the international standards of the Geneva Conventions that the modern world only drafted in 1949.
Section 5. A new paradigm.
So what did the Medina blueprint truly represent in the grand scheme of history? Think about this. At the exact same time, the massive resource-rich Persian and Byzantine empires were running on absolute monarchies, hereditary privilege, and the very arbitrary rule of men. Yet here, rising literally from the sand, was a state operating on a written social contract that guaranteed protection of minorities and the impartial rule of law. It was an incredibly sophisticated egalitarian leap forward. And this isn't just ancient history. For modern communities looking to replicate this incredible resilience and social capital today, the structural takeaways are right here for us. First, build your central institution, your hub. Second, forge deep relationships and brotherhood before a crisis ever hits. Third, write down your mutual agreements clearly. Fourth, actively engage and include the broader society around you. And fifth, ensure your leadership stays grounded at the exact same level as the people. That last point on leadership, it is absolutely vital. The Prophet didn't govern from some fancy ivory tower. He slept in simple, identical mudrooms right next to the mosque. He went hungry when the community went hungry. He physically carried bricks to build the infrastructure.
True authority in the Medina blueprint didn't come from being elevated above the people. It came from being intimately embedded in their daily reality. That shared struggle is exactly what earned unbreakable trust.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to carry forward. This blueprint transformed impoverished refugees into the architects of a state that changed the world forever, using vision, justice, and profound communal trust. So the real question we have to ask ourselves now is, how can our modern communities take these very principles and build worthy of this 1,400-year-old legacy today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this sparks some incredible ideas for you to take back to your own communities.